It's 1980, and as we all know, British society is on the brink of collapse. The economy's ruined, the Soviets are going to blow us up tomorrow, and practically everything else will kill you too. But there's a new moral panic that you should absolutely sacrifice everything for.
Despite the efforts of customs officers, it is inevitable that smuggled goods do get through.
Story after tragic story of the effect of this type of material.
And the more you feed people, you corrupt them and entice them to want something more hard.
Should video nasties be censored, or should they be freely available to adults and children?
That's right, the video nasty. In the United Kingdom, the Films Rating Board, the BBFC, and the government have the power to ban films. Films that may be objectionable, or as we call them in law, obscene. And back when people were a lot more traditional, shall we say, a lot of things got banned. Sometimes you see it and think, fair enough, I don't really want to live on a planet where spit on your grave exists too. Other times, it's the BBFC quite literally banning and editing nunchucks out of films because they thought they were a menace to society. I'm not making it up. That went on until the 90s. Anyway, I digress. 1980. The law at the time only allowed the BBFC, the film ratings people, to ban cinema films. They couldn't do anything else. However, the government had the power to seize anything that they declared obscene, under this law called the Obscene Publications Act. There's one catch-all clause in its definition of obscenity, which is defined as being able to deprave and corrupt the public. So, if your local police force think that the book you've written or the film you've rented may constitute as being obscene, well, they can arrest you, they can arrest the publisher, and the distributor. I say arrested. You probably wouldn't be convicted. This is going to be important in a sec. By the end of the 1970s, you started to get these video cassettes. Immediately, you could have a whole cinema's archive in your house, and then some. And they didn't have to be rated either. You could have films that would never make it into the cinema. So lots of films you wouldn't see in the cinemas started to circulate very quickly. Some films were genuinely interesting, and others were schlock and filth. Up and down the country, obscene videos were seized by local police forces. However, because it wasn't standardised and there was no official law banning certain films, some were a lot less liberal than others about films. And there were some pretty hilarious stories happening. A video shop got raided once, and copies of Apocalypse Now and the mainstream Dolly Parton musical The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas got seized based on the name. They thought it was probably some sort of pornography. A prank letter was at one stage sent to Mary Whitehouse telling her about the horrible things that happened in a film called Cannibal Holocaust. From there, she complained so loudly that the press got involved, and immediately it became front page news and a new moral panic to kickstart the decade and distract everyone else from all the horrible stuff. Eventually, this all became a complete mess, so the Director of Public Prosecutions at the time decided there needed to be some sort of order to it all. Films, if they were seized, could be successfully prosecuted. It was distributed to every police force in the country, and lots of them followed it. This was the list of the video nasties. I've put the full list in a little ticker below, and the ones that are currently still banned by the BBFC I've included in red. Now, I'm going to try and be fair here, because we've got to remember this was almost 40 years ago now. Standards were different. What you expected in film was very different. And even now, being uncomfortable with some of the things in these films I think is fairly legitimate. Within this list, you've got a fair amount of grisly body horror. It's fairly easy to defend. At the same time, you've got some pretty awful violence against women and animals, and weird, bizarre Nazi fetishism masquerading as legitimate cinema. I can completely sympathise with people who wouldn't want these films to exist. If you truly believe that work and art can deprave and corrupt people, then why would you keep these legal? I've seen a couple of the legal ones and read a fair bit about the others, and you're not missing much. It's very hard to defend these films for a couple of reasons. But the main one is that they're not really great films. They're exploitation films, they're shock and very little else. These films are all designed to be provocative and obscene, to get a reaction out of windbags with nothing better to do than to call out they don't like degenerate. And it worked. The prosecutions list was not enough to the public. There needed to be more action. And so, in 1984, the government came up with the Video Recordings Act. Notice one of these in the corner? That became a legal requirement. In order to have your video sold anywhere in the United Kingdom, you had to get it rated in the same way that a film had to be rated. Keep in mind, this approach is not what any other Western country does, it's very much voluntary. This became a legal requirement. Films had to be rated. If you didn't rate your films, you'd get fined or go to prison. But the mooing mob importantly got what it wanted, and these annoying grannies could go back to doing what they do best, campaigning for the banning of literally everything that they weren't going to use in the first place. My original plan here was a rather long bit on why censorship is bad. However, as I was editing it, I realised that it's not really necessary. We all know why it's stupid, and the backlash to censors is far more mainstream than it ever was in the 80s. Thankfully, the BBFC is fairly reasonable these days, and a video nasties crisis probably won't happen again. Unfortunately, a lot of the same laws that allowed it to happen are still on the book. There's very little we can do about the BBFC should it decide to become very authoritarian. I guess we can hope that they don't, or just make sure they don't censor the internet.
Hello?
Hi, I'm looking for your advert for adult videos.
Yes, love.
Can I arrange to get some?